in terms of the human relationships, the juxtaposition of one person to another, the form and the content.
Artie, why don't you knock off the bullshit and get to the point?
Hey kids, it's time for Pizza and Pop Culture with our Rogues Gallery of Talent. Coming at you on location from Eastside Pizza in Wallingford, Connecticut. Now serving up geek pizza with extra cheese.
Guys, we're back together here.
Yay!
We're actually in a room,
physically
not
in a
Zoom.
room. Yeah, this is kind of crazy. We're not yet back in the pizza place. We're in an empty store next door that is owned by Angelo and George. So this is our phase one reopening of pizza and pop culture.
We're testing to see if none of us die while we're in this empty room, then we can move back to the pizza place
and start kissing.
Yes, as Jay on Red Letter Media says, we are social differencing here, right?
Yeah.
So welcome back, everyone, to Pizza and Pop Culture. If you hadn't noticed, we are that's the name of the show. I just want to remind you that before we get into our talking points, you could follow us on Facebook, Twitter, our website, Pizza Pop Culture, and you can contact us through those venues and such. Please subscribe to the show because that makes our numbers go up and makes things happier for us. And if you're so inclined, also rate us 5 stars, especially on the Apple Podcast. That might help us out as well.
We would greatly appreciate that.
Greatly appreciate it. We're in our phase one of reopening our show, but Connecticut, by the time you listen to this show, will be in phase 2. Coming back from the virus that shall not be named. And movie theaters are part of that reopening. Now, I saw recently there's hardly any really, I wouldn't even call them C-list movies coming out through the month of July for theatrical. So, Pete, you'd mentioned...
Yeah, I had saw that some of the larger theater chains that are still managing to stay open, the ones that haven't completely died and shriveled up during this whole thing, I heard a rumor that they were going to be showing older films to kind of get people back and kind of test the waters a little bit, and then, in a few months when when everything's back to normal, the studios are going to put out their big blockbusters. Your Black Widow, your what other blockbusters are coming? James Bond coming out.
That's a great idea.
Well, I think part of the reason is everyone's opening at different times. Every state's left to their own devices, so they kind of want to wait till there's a national reopening, I think. Yeah. So we'll see about that.
Which makes a lot of sense.
Right. But, because we all love movies and we're waiting for theaters to reopen, I think we should talk about some of our favorite directors while we're here.
Oh, that's awesome.
Like, what have you been watching at home lately? And Pete, I'll let you start.
Well, let me see. You could always go with the go-to answer, of course, is going to be Steven Spielberg. Everybody loves Steven Spielberg. There's not really much bad things you can say about Steven Spielberg. Okay, everybody loves him. But I'd say if I was going to pick one of my favorite directors, it would be a guy named Ishiro Honda. Now, Ishiro Honda was Akira Kurosawa's AD, so this guy has definitely the pedigree. But the majority of his career was actually making all the Godzilla movies in Japan. He did the original, he did the lion's share of all of what's called the Showa series, which was up till 1975. The majority of these movies, and he recycled a lot of the same actors from Kurosawa's films, together with a writer named Sekizawa. They basically made that entire genre of monster movie, which was incredibly popular not only in Japan but in the United States through the 60s and the 70s.
Shows or movies?
Movies.
Oh.
So basically, you got your King Kong versus Godzilla, which they're remaking, coming out November 20th of this year.
And there's one of your blockbusters for the fall.
And there's another blockbuster.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think Ishiro Honda would probably be one of my top ones. Of course, you can always go with Orson Welles. You can't go wrong with Orson Welles. I mean, Citizen Kane, which is up until recently considered the greatest English language film ever made.
What is not? Don't tell me Avengers Endgame, because I'll throw a chair at you.
Oh no, Captain Marvel.
Captain Marvel.
Captain
Well,
Marvel.
Clearly, yes, that is
Captain
by far.
Marvel. No, I think North by Northwest is considered better. Now.
Really?
Yeah,
I
a few
love
years
it.
ago there was another survey taken, and I think North by Northwest got it.
Okay. Okay. Citizen Kane is not. You're right. It's not the greatest film ever made, but at the time, and for the breakthroughs made in that film, that's why it was considered, the greatest film ever.
Oh,
made
yeah,
at the time.
and the man
the
definitely-
technical prowess in that movie, putting the camera in the floor and all that kind of stuff. But you're right. I mean, it's as a narrative, it's good.
It's decent enough, but the man definitely was a very innovative director. Not only did he take, he wanted the camera low enough on one shot, but it physically couldn't get there, so he dug a hole in the studio floor.
Right.
Or he also used to take he actually edited Shakespeare. I believe he took Hamlet and took out the famous soliloquy and actually made it better for a stage show. Yeah, it's like the least needed part of the play is the most famous part.
That's funny.
And
I was not aware
the
of
man actually had the stones to edit Shakespeare.
But one of my favorite Orson Welles movies is Touch of Evil.
Oh, absolutely.
And, there's a lot of shots in there. Forget the opening shot. There's shots inside the film where there's one where they get into the elevator later in the film. And this elevator looks like it can barely hold the three guys that get in there. And I'm thinking, there's a Mitchell inside there, right? How did they get that in there? Because the camera stays in the elevator and goes for the ride to the next floor. So I'm wondering if it was a similar thing where he found a way to jam it in there somehow.
I'm sure he was one of these guys that just didn't care how you did it, just do it. Kind of the same attitude that like Jim Cameron has.
Right.
Now, I don't care that this camera won't fit. Make it fit.
Because I'm the king of the world.
Not only
Exactly.
that, but him being as fat as he gotten, he had to jam lots of things into places that couldn't fit.
All right, Paul, on that note, why don't you throw one of your favorite
I would
directors
have
out?
to say, for me, for summer, for pretty much any time, Guy Ritchie.
Ooh, Guy Ritchie.
Guy
Excellent
Ritchie,
call.
his stuff is fun. And his writing, if you watch Rock and Roller, of course, Snatch. All right, we have to, when he got in with Madonna.
Lock, Stock.
With Stock and Barrel, that was the blueprint for Snatch.
Yeah.
But character development, you just laugh. Everything he does with even just those two movies. Love the Sherlock Holmes ones are great. The second one I love. The first one was good. Second one was, fabulous.
I love how the characters, all their stories intersect by the end. All the capers end up in one place by the end.
That's it.
It's where instead of having parallel action taking place with these different scenarios, they all just careen toward each other.
There it is.
And I miss that in his studio stuff. I like his grittier, independent stuff.
We love Handsome Bob.
George, do you have a director?
I love Steven Soderbergh. I made a point to watch his two newest movies. One of them I wasn't crazy about, High Flying Bird. And the other one was The Laundromat with Meryl Streep. It was a good movie.
I haven't seen either of those, so I can't.
Yeah, they're both straight to Netflix. They're made for Netflix.
Okay.
But I wanted to say before about Orson Welles, I loved it when he was in Ed Wood. He was great in that movie.
He was great.
They want Charlton Heston to play a Mexican.
Vincent D'Onofrio.
No, he did a
nailed him.
fantastic
Yeah,
job.
That's right.
He did.
That was
But now,
But
did
he was
they edit his
overdubbed
voice?
by
Yes.
Maurice LaMarche,
Oh, I did
who
not.
did among other things the Brain in Pinky and the Brain, because he's basically doing an Orson Welles impersonation.
Right. That
So
makes
so
sense.
Vincent D'Onofrio physically, Maurice LaMarche audio.
Oh, really?
I was unaware of that. Wow.
At least I'm pretty sure about that.
No, it
If
was
I'm
true.
wrong, feel free to correct me at pizzapopculture@gmail.com.
No, I'm sure you're right about it. It's funny. You bring up Ed Wood, one of my favorite films, and Tim Burton, and we were talking off show about him recently. Tim Burton was one of these guys who came out of nowhere in the 80s and had this really cool style that nobody had seen before, and then all of a sudden it just became a parody of itself, where
Yeah,
he
exactly.
almost ripped himself off right out of the business. You know, it's
Yeah, it's just,
I agree.
yeah, it's just at some point, it just became too much. I don't know specifically where it was. I mean, I sort of checked out on Tim Burton at about Planet of the Apes. I mean, I cannot forgive him
that's
from Planet of the Apes.
pretty much where it was. After
But
Mars
that-
Attacks was
Yeah,
all
Mars-
downhill from there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean,
And
he
we
did
love
Big
Mars
Fish
Attacks.
Oh, Mars Attacks is fantastic.
I love Mars
It's
Attacks.
Me
hilarious.
too.
I haven't seen Big Fish or
Interesting.
or Willy Wonka either.
What's that bit you were doing the other day?
Oh yeah, I think College Humor did this short film called The Tim Burton Formula, where he's having actors playing everybody, obviously, but they're doing a board meeting because Tim Burton's got this idea for another movie. Okay, guys, you are the dream makers, we are the music makers. All right, what have you got? Go. Production design. I don't know. Stripes, spirals, take things that aren't black and paint them black. Perfect. Danny Elfman, what have you got for me? And Danny Elfman panics and just la 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 boom 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 boom. Perfect. Get my wife and Johnny Depp on the phone. And basically nails the entire Tim Burton formula, which is, it has become a parody of itself.
Yeah. You know, it makes me wonder because we recently the studio stumbled and fell over their newest auteur is Taika Waititi, and you wonder if that's going to happen to him. Kind of that same thing. He's kind of formulaic with what he does. So you're kind of wondering if his bit's going to run itself.
Yeah, he
dry.
kind of does. He kind of takes drama and quickly undercuts it with sarcastic humor.
Right.
And it works sometimes, it doesn't work other times, and it can get old real fast.
We'll have to see. We'll have to see over time how that plays out. But I almost get the sense he's kind of like in that Tim Burton. Because he looks at everything strangely. He brings something different to the table.
Right.
But it's worked so far, but it's only
I
been a couple of
agree.
features.
He
So,
hasn't fallen off the cliff yet.
Yeah. One of the modern filmmakers I like is David Fincher. I think just about
Oh,
everything
yeah.
I've seen from David Fincher. And that starts with Alien 3. I remember when I went to see Alien 3, I thought it was horrid. But I remember walking out and saying, the story was terrible, but the art direction and the direction of the way the film was directed, I really liked the way the camera was moving and the way the
One of the
drama
best
that was
looking
built.
bad movies
It
ever
really
made.
is
Yeah.
one of the best looking bad movies ever made, and you could see that guy had skill, and he's just about everything he's touched ever since has been gold.
The Game was overrated.
Okay,
I think so.
Panic Room.
Actually, I haven't
The
seen
girl with the
Panic Room.
dragon tattoo.
Oh, man, I didn't like that one.
You didn't like it?
No.
Which is funny because apparently the author of The Girl with the Dragon Tattoo basically wrote the book as if it was a David Fincher movie.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh.
And what, the movie only made $200 million, so they decided not to make any sequels?
I
they
thought
were
they
gonna
made
make-
No, I think there is a sequel.
they made the fourth
Oh.
chapter, didn't they? They
Yeah,
skipped
but-
right to the fourth chapter.
Yeah, but I think David Fincher was going to do sequels.
Do the series, right?
And then they decided not to.
But they have the Swedish versions.
Oh,
the
those,
ones
yeah.
made
Yeah,
in
the
Sweden.
Swedish versions they made all of them.
Those
And I
are
think
good.
they're all about 3 hours long, aren't they? It's like a 9-hour.
Oh, dear God.
Yeah. I haven't seen any of them, but it has the girl from Prometheus in there.
Rapace.
Oh, no.
Rapace.
Numi Rapace.
Yeah.
Rapace, Rapace, something.
Yeah, I don't know how to say her name. Sorry.
The chick from Prometheus.
Yes, the chick from Prometheus.
Speaking of Prometheus, although it itself is not a particularly good movie, you got to throw Ridley Scott into this.
Ridley Scott's a great filmmaker. I actually saw one of his films that came out in the early 2000s recently called The Counselor. I had never even heard about this thing. Angelo gave it to me for my birthday, and wow, it was really good. It was really good. It's Michael Fassbender plays this guy who's in some financial trouble, and he decides to smuggle drugs for one time and one time only to get himself out of debt. What could possibly go wrong when you deal with the Mexican cartel?
Yeah.
And wackiness ensues.
Yeah, pretty much. But what's his name is in there from No Country for Old Men?
The
Javier
villain.
Bardem.
Yes.
Javier Bardem. He's in there. He's great as usual.
Does he play a Mexican?
Yeah, he's the.
Oh, you can't give it away.
Well,
All
he's
right,
the
don't-
link. He's the link to
All
the
right,
cartel.
all right.
But I don't want to. Yeah.
Yeah, don't give it away.
Going back into the '90s was the explosion of auteur filmmakers. Well, we got about 3 minutes left in the segment. Anybody want to throw any more? directors out there real quick. Is that Easy Rider outside?
There he is.
Clint Eastwood,
David Lynch.
Clint Eastwood being a
Eastwood, yes.
Clint Eastwood.
Oh,
You know, it's funny you say that. Clint Eastwood, the last few movies, though, have been pretty... I mean, they're good movies to watch, but there's nothing spectacular about the direction. I mean, granted, he's 90. He probably just shows up and says, yeah, just point the camera and go. And
Yeah.
they've been very templated.
Right.
Fun to watch, like Sully and the one that just came out about the Atlanta bombing. I saw that one, too. But there's nothing that jumps out at you about the direction.
here's a person, George Clooney. I loved his movies that he directed. Where did he go? Where did he go?
He did a Suburbicon recently, didn't he? And
Yeah.
I haven't seen that.
Everyone at this table is fans of the Coen brothers, so we can't not
How could
do a
you not be?
segment on
How
those.
could you not be a fan of the Coen brothers?
You're right. Hail Caesar was a little disappointing to me, but
Even though, guess what? You had given it to me, and it's on my machine. The more I watch it, the more I like it.
okay.
Have you seen the Ballad of Buster Scruggs?
Not yet. I hear that's
Oh,
fantastic.
that is
That's the anthology thing,
It's
right?
an anthology. I will give you the heads up that every story is a downer, no matter how beautiful it is, story wise or visually. They all end in such downers.
Sounds great.
No, it's fantastic. It really is. It's very quirky, and it was one of these things that just like, I suppose I'll check it out. It's on Netflix.
Right. Yeah.
Okay, what they must have lost a bet or something like that. But boy, oh boy, was that really good! And I wish it wasn't on Netflix because I would like to own it and have all the extras that come along with it.
Right.
They won't put it out on Netflix as a DVD box set or something?
Apparently not.
Yeah, that's weird.
But yeah, check out the Ballad of Buster Scruggs.
All right. Final minute. Anybody else? Any more directors you can throw out there?
I always loved Martin Scorsese.
Yeah,
You
of
know,
course.
I wasn't crazy about The Irishman, but I love him. I love The Aviator.
Yeah. Oh, he's, the only thing I got to say about Martin Scorsese is that when he dies, there's going to be a lot of Italians on the unemployment line. I'm going to say, you know what I'm saying, who's going to make a movie now but the mob?
Pete, any last directors you can think of?
Any last directors I can think of? One that I certainly have to cheer for. I mean, this is going to be extraordinarily commercial, but one you have to cheer for. Somebody who started off doing like really terrible monster movies. You got Peter Jackson going.
Oh, there you go.
Going from really bad monster movies to somehow the studio taking a look at his body of work and saying, let's have this guy do the most ambitious 3 movies ever made.
Yeah, that's a good one. That's a good one.
And so you definitely have to. I mean, whether his stuff is like it or hate it. I mean, you got to cheer for Lord of the Rings, but not so much for The Hobbit. But I understand all of the behind the scenes crap that was going on and kept The Hobbit down from actually being a decent 3 movies.
But then you have to puke for King Kong.
I actually liked King Kong.
Did you really?
I think it was great and it was terrible at the same time. A lot of the movies I like are terrible in different ways. But I think every time Kong is on the screen, even in the stupid ice skating scene.
Oh, man.
Every time Kong is on screen, it's a beautiful movie. It's long, it's bloated, and somebody needs to have told him, Pete, knock it off.
You guys need to have a Kong off at some point.
Oh, man, I'm sorry. The cringe.
One more director from you on the way out.
On the way out, for me, a director, I would have to say Ron Howard.
Oh, that's a good one.
Yes, Ron Howard always made entertaining movies, and he did a fantastic job on the Beatles.
Good one.
Yes.
Good one. And of course, I'll just say Quentin Tarantino because you can't do a segment on directors without Quentin Tarantino.
You cannot.
All right, we're going to take a little break. Again, on our way out, I want to remind everyone that our ad spaces are for lease. So if you're tired of hearing the same ads over and over on this show, you can put yours in there. Just contact us through our website or our social media. So we will be back with another thought-provoking, hopefully, segment next.
It was the three-legged dog of comics.
It was bad.
These two gentlemen met in jail, and when they got out, they started publishing.
It should have been mobsters instead of doing what they're doing in comics.
Management there was questionable at times.
Some of it has to do with people who go to jail.
We are sinners. We have corrupted the youth. Stuff that should never have been sold to kids.
And then there was Charlton. I couldn't quite tell what they were doing.
Charlton was just a hodgepodge of weird titles.
What is this? Who am I dealing with?
John threw nickels around like they were manhole covers.
CATAP. They were cheap.
Hell yes, they're cheap.
They were a special kind of special is what they were.
Critic was horrible.
You could smell them beginning to decay even as they were rolling off the press.
At one point, they actually did have to move the comics operation into a bowling alley.
It's something out of a sitcom.
We want to publish comic books in the worst way, and they did.
It's been called the street-fighting cousin of Marvel and DC. Maybe you've heard of them. Probably not. But you do know the industry legends that called it home. This is Charlton Comics. Follow at charltonmovie.com.
Oh, it's gonna suck.
Hello, we are back here at Pizza and Pop Culture podcast in the our Phase 1 reopening. That's what we're calling this, Phase 1 reopening. So again, if you want your ad into that break we just came out of, just contact us through our website or social media at Pizza Pop Culture on Facebook, Twitter, or the website pizzapopculture.com. So, we talked about anniversaries on episode 6, and we touched on Empire Strikes Back, Pete. We touched on Jaws,
The Shining.
The Shining.
Also Flash Gordon, which we didn't talk about, but that also
We will.
turns 40.
and others. Pac-Man.
Pac-Man turns 40.
But one turned 35 this summer. And it was one that doesn't really jump out at a lot of people, but it really is special to Edson, George, and I. And that is Robotech.
Indeed.
Carl Masek and Harmony Gold. Harmony Gold purchased 3 Japanese animated series is because afternoon syndication required 65 episodes. And in Japan, they do a limited number of episodes. And in order to have the 65, he had to combine their 3 different series together. And they did a pretty seamless job. Those would be Super Dimension Fortress Macross, Super Cavalry Division Southern Cross, and Genesis Climber Muspeda.
And if this is sounding a bit odd for people, and like myself, it's like taking the Lord of the Rings, the original Star Wars, and the Matrix, and combining them all into one coherent story.
Yeah, that's a great analogy. So I'm going to defer to either one of you if you want to kick this thing off. Robotech, what do you remember? What do you remember about it 35 years ago when you first saw it?
Okay, so this is going to make us tell how old we are, unfortunately, because it's 35 years old. 1985, when I was a senior in high school. And actually, you, Keith, and George actually told me about it when it was, I believe, halfway through the first part, Macross. Or I didn't even see it from the beginning. You guys told me about this.
We did.
Yeah, you told me about it. It was actually near the end of the Macross part of it, where I thought at the end when they end the whole thing with To the Stars, and there's like, oh, now we're going to, and then the previews for the next episode had nothing to do with these characters. And I'm like, are you kidding me? I was like, I just got into it, and it was like they just ended it.
It's very traumatic.
But some of the things I remember, it was so different than any other animated or any other TV series. You had a major character die right in the middle of the series, episode 18. Roy Fokker, who was the leader of their squadron that would always go out and protect the ship, just got shot down and made it back, but then died from blood loss. That was
great character.
And the thing of it was, it wasn't even. I mean, him dying was bad enough, but then they had that hospital scene where Rick is told he was shot down previously, and he's in the hospital,
And then he's told about that. This is the scene that really got to me, that sent goosebumps. He's told about it, and it was like that was his best friend and mentor from when he was born, probably 7, 8 years old on. And he's told about it, and that look on his face, it was real, that he was affected by it. And at the time, he was like, I don't know why I'm getting so detailed, but it just stuck with me. He's playing with his model plane that looked exactly like a flashback of Roy Fokker flying this type of twin prop plane.
That's right.
And as soon as he heard about it, he drops it, and they show a close up of that plane just smashing. And that, more than anything else, was what affected me.
We'd never seen anything like that, because on afternoon cartoons, you got He-Man, G.I. Joe, Transformers, Thundercats. Right. Nobody died. Nobody even got injured really badly. Rub some dirt on it, and you're back in the game. And this was completely different.
And there's shallow characters too in those cartoons, and then in Robotech you got so many variety of different types of people in the show, from Rick, Lin May, Lisa Hayes, Captain Global. It's amazing.
They were very well developed characters, because this was a linear story that continues. Every episode continues and developed on the previous one and so forth, and everything that happened to them was affected in all the forward episodes.
That's a great point, Edson. That's what also was different about it. It was serialized. You didn't have serialized afternoon cartoons.
Yeah, it was very unusual for the time.
Right, it was a soap opera. So it completely changed the game. You brought up Lin May. That character was a narcissist. and you had that psychological tug of war. Like, Rick kept going back to her even though he knew he shouldn't, and he didn't know why. And you know how sometimes people just have a hold on people, and they're bad for you. And it was so adult themed for something that was on after school.
Yeah, they had that's a good relationships that develop over time and change, and that I never saw in any other show as well. What is considered perfectly typical today, they had an interracial relationship between Roy Fokker and Claudia Grant. And I just found out this much later, is that they actually cut out from the original their first kiss, because it was considered controversial back then. They cut that out in the original broadcast. They added it on when they released the DVDs.
Right.
Yeah.
But they cut that out, which is like, you think about the difference of time.
You also had, and they never specifically mention anyone's age, but it seems pretty apparent that Rick is a little younger than Lisa.
Yeah.
So, now he's getting involved with an older woman.
Hot stuff.
Yeah.
But meanwhile, over at G.I. Joe, your bad guys are written like Yosemite Sam, and all the world's problems
What are
are
you
solved.
saying, Pete?
All the world's problems are solved in 21 minutes. Very, very different.
21 minutes, because the last minute was saved for the PSA.
That's right.
Knowing it's half the battle.
What they're doing over at Robotech was just practically unheard of at the time.
It really was. It was, and to me, you had Japanese anime here already, but it was the one that kind of launched what has become now a complete craze. It's just this anime conventions, and the shows are aplenty.
It raised the bar.
Yeah, up to that point, we did have Voltron. We had
Speed Racer,
Battle of the Planets.
Star Blazers.
Yeah, which were all heavily edited to try to take all the violence and the complexity out, whereas Robotech left the complexity, for the most part, of each one of the three series in.
Exactly.
And just trusted your audience is going to be sophisticated enough to actually understand it, and you did.
Plus, Robotech, there's no superheroes in there. Battle of the Planets,
Right, they're super ninjas.
Yeah, they're just normal people,
Yep.
What I really liked, and we haven't even talked about the mecha, but what was really great about it too was you have Fokker's death. In the very next episode, they 1-2 punch you. They give you a right-left combo, and they kill Ben Dixon.
Yeah.
The very next episode. And it was coming when they get at the restaurant. He orders the steak, and they put the steak down, and they get called to duty, and they run off, and they slowly push in on the steak. It's like, he ain't coming back to get
That's
that
another
steak.
one, yeah.
That's right. I forgot about that. That's great.
heavy foreshadowing, almost ham-fisted, but, you know, it's a cartoon and you don't expect that.
Yeah.
And I think that scene when he died, he couldn't get away. There was a blast that he couldn't get away from, and I believe it was Rick's. They showed a Rick like doing the sign of the cross.
He did, yeah.
Someone did the sign of the cross
Rick.
as that was as they knew that they were going to. His buddy was going to die, and he was just like there was absolutely nothing he could do to stop it. He barely got out alive, and he was kind of like.
Yeah. But I think, you know, what I also liked about it, you know, this is in the age now, the Transformers and Voltron, you've got all the transforming mecha craze in the early 80s. And they had that too, but theirs, it was based on like actual, you know, that looked like an F-35 or something, the plane that transformed. And you could almost see them making that work now. Like, why they could probably do that. And the cool thing is it had 3 modes, so it would go into the Guardian mode, which was just the legs came down and the arms came out, but it still retained the bulk of the plane shape.
Yeah.
And then they had the Battleoid mode, is where it stood up like a robot, and the pilot was in the head.
I believe it was at least Roy Foker's was the F-14 Tomcat, which was a very popular fighter for the United States Air Force. And as you're saying, this thought just came up that I almost forgot. When Rick kind of gets thrown into the war almost by accident or by necessity, and he winds up commandeering one of these planes that he's never used before, and as Roy's talking him through it, and there's a Zentradi, which is 60 foot tall, being coming at him, and he basically empties out the automatic weapon. Maybe he fires maybe like 100 bullets at him, maybe getting a couple of them in, and the guy finally collapses. And that look on Rick's, it's not like this celebratory, yay, I got him, or it's just this overwhelming,
terror.
Terror. That's it. That's basically it. That's real.
Well, and he slipped into shock.
Yep.
Right after that, you know, he passed.
And right after that, he couldn't go on for a while.
Right. So it really dealt with, you know, real emotion and real issues. And it's weird that it didn't catch on bigger. You know, like everybody I knew around me was watching it in high school. Like everybody couldn't believe, they were like, this is awesome. I mean, people are dying and, you know, the characters are real.
Yeah.
But it never became like a national phenomenon. Like the Transformers, like G.I. Joe, even, you know, He-Man. Like, you know, we're still waiting for a feature film that I know they'll fuck up.
But it was really just it probably was because it was ahead of its time. It's the idea of serialization. We've talked about Star Trek Deep Space Nine, which has the same problem, is that it's serialized, and at the time, you can't miss an episode, or it's not on at the same time. Sometimes it'll be on at 4 o'clock in the afternoon. Sometimes it'll be on at 4:30, and it would get shuffled around. And if you missed an episode, you were sunk.
Right, that's true.
You know, whereas at the time, Megatron's doing something stupid again, and Autobots solve the problem in 22 minutes, moving on. And if you happen to miss tomorrow's episode, you're not gonna wonder why. Well, wait a minute, why is Megatron doing something stupid this week?
Right.
That's a great point. No, there's no on demand, no streaming. If you miss it that day, if you miss it in this type of story, then you missed a lot. You missed a vital part of the story, of the actual overall story.
But they had really cool tech. I mean, even the Zentradi battle pods were cool.
Yeah.
You know, so why in the world did they not figure out a way to capitalize on the toys?
Well, the toys actually had an interesting story. Not only was the show made up of multiple stories, but Bandai, the company that actually made the toys in Japan for the individual series, leased the likenesses to Hasbro, to Matchbox, to Select, and to the role-playing game company called FASA. So over at Hasbro, you've got a Veritech fighter that turns into Jetfire, which they can't put into the TV show because it's already animated. Matchbox isn't all that popular, and so their stuff is lower tech and not really getting a lot of play in the toy aisles. And there was just a lot of confusion going on in the toy aisles because nobody could actually claim to have Robotech. Hasbro has the character but can't make a Robotech, and Matchbox can't make this one vehicle because the Transformers are using it, and the role-playing game company is using the characters but is calling it BattleTech. and Select has something completely different. So it was. I think if it had merchandise to go along with it, or actually properly branded Robotech merchandise, you probably would have done a lot better.
There's a quiz on this, listeners. You have to rattle off everything Pete just said from memory.
I can't do that.
Wow. And he claims he doesn't really know.
I really don't know much.
But
You've heard the extent of my Robotech knowledge.
well, that's pretty impressive.
That was amazing.
Because I don't know anything about all that toy stuff. I was not aware.
But yeah, but Transformers had toys, G.I. Joe had toys, Thundercats had toys. Robotech had no real toy presence.
No, they didn't.
No.
I remember we were in high school. Edson and I took off to New York, very naive, hopped on the train, never been there before, to go to a couple of like Forbidden Planet and a couple other places in New York to buy Robotech toys or Macross toys. And we were walking around the city with these giant cardboard boxes full of toys and models, just oblivious to. And this is when 42nd Street was like a shithole. You know, it was crackheads and pimps and hookers and, you know. And
oh my!
I don't know. We still don't know how we got home.
I remember waiting to cross the street. I figured, okay, we're crossing the street, so cars didn't care if you're crossing the street or not. There's a car that came within a foot of us, I believe, and I was like, what the heck just happened?
Yeah.
I was like, they didn't care. They were just going to go.
It's crazy.
And I think we went the wrong way on one road and had to come back, and it was just like an adventure.
We've been primarily talking about the Macross section of Robotech, and we're talking about Robotech as a whole. We got about 4.5 minutes to go. What about the 2 spin-off series that they wove in?
Southern Cross.
Southern Cross.
That always felt like the worst one of the 3. I enjoyed it, but it just felt, I don't know. I've only watched it through once, so.
Really?
Anybody else? Yeah.
In 35 years.
I've
once.
only watched the Southern Cross once.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah, that even in the original Japanese, that was also not a very popular series as well. It was a very small amount of episodes. They even added on an episode where it was just Dana telling flashback episode of how Max and Miria got together. It just seemed to fit because there was just a way that he could weave that story of the Robotech Masters. The Robotech Masters were the kind of like the bad guys in that one, and Carl Macek had just thought of like making them the masters of the Zentradi. So it seemed to fit once the Zentradi War ended badly for them that they would come and follow up on that. But that was probably the least favorite one.
Yeah, but I really like the 3rd act, which is the Genesis Claremont Beta.
It's great.
You've got this dystopian, post-apocalyptic Earth that's been wiped out again. You know, and now here comes this other race of these giant insects like the Invid, and they were creepy AF, you know?
They were.
And it was great because you had this, like, just this group of, they were survivors. They didn't have a lot of resources. You know, they're finding broken down tech and fixing it and using it, and, you know, they're riding around on motorcycles and they're scavenging and they're doing whatever it takes to survive. And that was really interesting because it was completely different from the first 2, which were very polished and streamlined, and you had the military and all that stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah, these were like resistance fighters that just got together. But I did like that was a great introduction, a new type of mecha. That was a really cool motorcycle that transformed all around you and made you into an armored soldier.
Right, it was like body armor that, yeah.
So that was really good, but you're right, it was completely different. It was more like just a bunch of people that randomly got together and they kind of formed the force and took it upon themselves to seek out the Invid headquarters and take it out.
It was a lot like how the Fellowship of the Ring, how they come together, you know, they piecemeal it together. It starts with a couple people, and then they keep adding components as they go, and, you know.
It did work, though. I liked it a lot.
No, totally. It's weird, though, because it did have similar themes with, you know, the music. They had the singer, and they had the jet. And they did have a jet that looked very similar. So it did look like a natural progression of the tech from the first one.
Yeah.
All right, well, 1.5 minutes. Any final thoughts?
I actually want to get my son to watch it again. I want to watch it with my son, so because he loves the Last Airbender, and I don't know if you guys have seen that.
That's incredible because Abby just got in. My daughter Abby just got into The Last Airbender, and I was telling her, you know, I will watch that with you as long as we go episode by episode. You're gonna have to start watching Robotech. I wanted to share. It just you know you're filled up with so many good feelings about it and thoughts that you want to like share that with someone else.
Yeah.
Speaking of which, now, if someone like myself, who's not particularly into it, wanted to get into it, is it available on Blu-ray?
Well, you just took what I was going to close with. Yeah, it's everywhere, actually. Crackle, Netflix, I believe Amazon Prime.
Okay.
It's just about everywhere now, and they've remastered them, so they look really nice.
Oh, fantastic.
Yeah.
I'll also add to that, if in YouTube, they actually have all the original episodes with subtitles of how they were, at least with the Macross one. I'm not sure about the other two series.
Really?
So you could actually see what the original story was and how to compare it.
All right, well, another good segment, gents. Once again, we are really letting our nerd flag fly, man. People are probably like, what the fuck with these guys? Why do you talk about all this stuff?
With such passion.
With such passion. We're going to take another quick break and with another ad that you've heard ad nauseum. And again, if you want to swap it out, let us know. We shall return.
From the galactic depths of the comic book universe comes the ghosts of the stratosphere, ready to galvanize and energize your mind with the latest of comic book news and reviews. And why are you stopping me?
Yes, that's much better. Hi, this is Andy Larsen for Ghosts of the Stratosphere. Join me every week along with my co-hosts Rob Stewart and Chad Smith, as well as a cavalcade of fantastic comic book guests as we dish out heaping helpings of the greatest and latest of comic book news and reviews. You can find us under Ghosts of the Stratosphere as well as on our website www.gotstratosphere.com. Hope to see you soon, folks.
All right, we are back. We're going to close out our Phase 1 reopening of Pizza and Pop Culture.
We are not at Eastside Pizza, but we are a stone's throw away.
As the crow flies. Yes, we're right next door in the empty old Indian restaurant here. And we will be moving back into Eastside when Phase 2 opens here. But this is cool because it's the first time we've been physically together doing this show since January 26th. That's 5 months almost.
Holy cow.
I know.
Seems like yesterday.
It does. I'm just glad we're off of Zoom. That was starting to get on my nerves. So, before we tidy up here and call it a day, I just want to thank some of our friends out there and also call out some podcasts that we like to listen to. Those would be Pinto Comics, Ghost of the Stratosphere, The 430 Movie, Inglorious Trexperts, and Best Movies Never Made. And I'm going to throw in Delta Flyers. Garrett Wong and Robert Duncan McNeil of Star Trek Voyager are now doing their own podcast, and it's a lot of fun to listen to. They recap Star Trek Voyager episodes in order every week. So
sounds cool.
Yeah, it's very cool. It's a good listen. So on the last episode, there was a middle segment there where we were a little upset with the Access Media.
Ah, yes.
And some of these blogging sites, and in part of the conversation, we talked about how they're all funded, most of them anyway, seem funded by venture capitalist money, and that at some point it's going to go away, and they're going to have to make it up somehow with ad revenue or what have you. Since that episode recorded, and now this episode's recorded, one of them actually...
Bit the dust?
Bit the dust. Newsarama was absorbed by Game Radar. And... they are now a subsection of Game Radar, and basically their archive is gone. And if you go to the Newsarama, if you read an article on Newsarama, you can type newsarama.com, it still comes up. But if you start reading an article at the top, it doesn't say Newsarama anymore, it says Game Radar. And of course, the whole look of the page is different.
And 20 years of archives are just gone.
Gone. They had an interesting story pop up, though, in the last couple of days about DC Comics.
Oh, yeah?
So, well, you brought it to my attention, Pete. There
you go. I'm just helping cheerlead over here.
When COVID hit, Diamond Distributors decided they were packing it in and they were no longer going to distribute comic books of any form.
And Diamond is the only game in town. And basically, if you're a comic shop and you want to order comics for your store, the only place you could go to was Diamond Distributors.
Correct. And not only that, but Diamond Distributors was the only place you could go to if you were a publisher to get distribution.
Which I always thought was I can't believe that a business had that going for 25 years with just one distributor.
What could possibly
doesn't
go
make
wrong?
sense.
Yeah.
Well, we found out because Diamond said, "Oh, COVID, this is our chance to get out of this game." So they packed it in, and the comic book industry went into a complete free fall panic.
Because now you can't distribute your comics if you're making them, and you can't buy them if you're looking to sell. So,
right,
what do you do when your main distributor says bye bye?
Your only distributor.
Your only distributor says.
Not only did they say bye-bye, within that time frame, they started telling the publishers that they couldn't pay what they owed them, and they wanted to go on some kind of payment plan. And Steve Jeppe over there clearly did something wrong running that business.
It was pandemonium, basically.
Basically,
long and short of it.
So DC Comics, gotta give them credit. They in the scramble figured out a way to still get some titles to their direct market, and they did it by going to some new distribution methods. Those would be
Midtown Comics and Discount Comic Bookstore. They both they solved the Diamond shutdown problem by coming. They were the biggest two online comic stores, and they created their own distribution.
correct, and it worked. And what's actually funny is everyone knows that collects comic books. It's New Comic Wednesday. And you could actually get in trouble in the past if the books would come into your store on Monday or Tuesday, but you couldn't put them out until Wednesday. But now, when DC did that, it was Tuesday, so they're on a different day. Flash forward, the comic book industry is starting to come back, and Marvel and the other publishers are getting books back out now through Diamond. And lo and behold, DC decided not to play that game no more, and they bailed on Diamond completely.
You can't blame them.
No, I mean, I don't blame them.
Oh, good.
Diamond wasn't there for them.
Yeah.
But what's happened now, and this is the story on Newsarama, is that the comic shop owners have they've done this 180, and now they're really angry with DC Comics over this move.
I can't fathom what's going on. They completely are against this, and they seem to be having this extreme loyalty to Diamond. I mean, what did Diamond do for them? I would think this would be a good thing for them, having multiple distributors where you can, if something were to happen to one of them, your business doesn't shut down. You just go to the other two or two out of the three. I just can't understand why they are doing and they're blaming DC for basically, their business not coming back, which is a wrong place to put the blame on.
I agree. If who knows how long this article will last on GamesRadar.com, but I will put the link up when we post the show. But if you can find it, it's written by Vanetta Rogers. The title's Comic Book Retailers Unite in Shock and Anger Over DC Split with Diamond. And in reading through it, and there's some big shop owners in here, Brian Hibbs from Comics Experience in San Francisco being one of them. They're all kind of complaining about the two big issues seem to be, one, they don't seem like they want to put the extra work in to make two orders. They like doing one order. Now, I don't know much about running a comic book shop, but I do have friends at Eastside Pizza that run a small restaurant who have to go through 6 distributors to get what they need.
Yeah, you don't get your napkins, you don't get your meat, you don't get your bread, you don't get your produce, you don't get your soda, you don't get that all through one distributor. You've got to go through, and that was 5. I just rattled off the top of my head.
Right.
And I'm sure that if George or Angelo were here, they would probably list off even more.
Yeah.
Yeah, you don't go through one vendor for everything in your restaurant.
Right.
Why would a comic book store be any different? I'm very, very naive over here. I don't understand why it would be any different.
I don't understand their stance at all. The thing that gets me is their business had to go away anyways because of the shutdown. But looming past that was the fact that their only place where they could get product was refusing to distribute to them. And there was no promises at all that they were going to come back anytime soon, whether the shutdown ended or not. It was still up in the air. They didn't give them any kind of timeline and anything. So how are they going to reopen their stores? So just adding those 2 other distributors is I believe, the pressure that put on Diamond to come back. I don't even think Diamond was going to come back right away because things opened up. I think the fact that they had competition now all of a sudden, now that put the pressure on them to come back. And now the comic store owners have some kind of weird loyalty to somebody who, I don't know.
Well, it almost makes it as if you're an extra arm of Diamond. You're an affiliate of Diamond because you're just doing their business for them at that point. It's almost on autopilot. You're just putting in your orders and then you can do your returns or what have you, but you're just dealing with that one machine the whole time, and now they have to sit down and do two different orders. Now, the second issue that comes with that, it seems like, is that because the new distributors, Lunar and the other one there, are actually, if they're part of a comic book retailer, they're not just distributors, they're part of a retail chain, they're competition to these other comic stores. So you're buying at less of a discount because you're buying from your competition and then having to resell it. And then in doing that, I mean, let's face it, I'm assuming if you're putting together a comic book order and you're going to buy, say, 100 titles, 66.6% of them are coming from Marvel and DC. And the other 33% are all the small independents. So now you're basically taking 1/3 of your business away from Diamond, so your bulk discounts from Diamond are reduced. So you're getting squeezed on both ends as far as getting, discounts. And there's a very small markup on comics. So these guys are basically now in business to tread water, which I think they were already in business to tread water to begin with.
That's the point. You made a great point. I think that's what rankles at them the worst. The fact that their other option other than Diamond is what used to be another competitor. That probably just might be like a pride thing. No, I'm not going to buy from someone who I'm competing with. But in addition to that, you're right when you're saying you just have one distributor. You're basically working for them. I mean, you think you're working for yourself, but you're at the mercy of everything Diamond tells you what to do. It's like, whatever new incentive program that they come up with, that's what you all of a sudden lay out into the store. And I remember going to stores before, and they're like, well, we got to do it this way. But it's kind of out of our hands because Diamond kind of said that, or else we're not going to get the. Is that really how they want to run their business? They don't want to use their own creativity or anything like that. Take ownership for it.
It's interesting too because and Pete turned me on to Clownfish TV on YouTube. You really should follow Clownfish, subscribe to their channel. It's really good. And
Clownfish TV.
Yeah.
With neon and geeky sparkles.
And they dropped a video this morning. We're taping this on June the 9th. They dropped a video about this morning. But weeks ago, they did one where they were showing the packages being delivered from the two different distributors and the difference where Diamond, the merchandise was damaged, heavily damaged. They just threw the comic books into the box and put this really horrible designed flyer on top from Steve Jeppy saying, we're back and we're stronger than ever. And hashtag we're in this together, right? And then you saw the one that came from Lunar. You and I have bought boxes from Midtown Comics. It came in the same way. It's the bubble wrap, double bagged inside the bubble wrap. And there's no way. I mean, you could probably shoot the box with the gun and the bullet's not going to hit the comics. So there's a huge difference in the way it's being handled. So it's amazing that Diamond can continue to act like, dare I say, the mob, and ship comics looking in that condition. And, I tend to think that they'll be better taken care of with the new methods. Just that the merchandise alone won't be damaged. I mean, again, I don't know what they go through as far as trying to return damaged product, but it can't be easy.
Which is a great point, the shipping part, because I know that's another reason that the comic shop owners say that now the shipping is going to be a little bit more expensive. But look what you're getting. Comic books, I love them for reading, but there's a lot of people who collect them they are a collectible, okay? So they cease to be a collectible when you get them with bent edges, ripped pages, any little crease on it, which you're going to get if you ship them like Diamond is doing. I don't know if this is a relatively new thing or over the years. Diamond couldn't have been doing this way back when. This must just be they're cutting corners, I guess, or just not caring because they know why should they care? They're the only ones that can do it, or were able to do it.
Yeah, It strikes me as more of a not care because where else are you going to go? Right. You know, it's this. We're the only game in town, so where are you going to go?
Yeah, when this news broke that DC was going to pull away from Diamond, I thought this would be a good thing for the comic book industry, but now it seems like I was way wrong, and it's not going to be a good thing based on everything I read in this article. And, you know, does Marvel go next? Does Marvel pull out?
Yeah, because the comic book industry they're treading water anyway.
Right. I mean,
And-
IDW is days away from being
Yeah,
closed.
and you've got Disney controlling Marvel, and you've got AT&T controlling DC Comics.
Right.
And both of them are close to going under because the comic book industry is just taking a header. And I'm sure that it came from higher up. Make money or else.
Oh, I'm sure. That's why DC scrambled and found a solution right away.
Yeah.
It was clearly mandated that, like, you know, you're on your own. You solve your problem, or you're done. But yeah, I'm guessing Marvel. I wouldn't be surprised if the minute we wrap up this recording, that Marvel announces the same thing. You know, it's only a matter of time, I think.
And I'm sure that the new guys, you know, wanting to get the business have probably given DC a much better rate, much better reasons to come over and work with them. I'm sure that it's probably looking very enticing to the other guys too.
Well, let me throw out a hypothetical. Let's say Marvel wants to do the same thing and go to Lunar, which is Midtown Comics, right? Do you think it would force them to break the distribution wing off away from the retail, and then maybe they can reset their pricing and structure for volume and all that kind of thing? I think because right now the problem I think the small comic shop owner has is that they're buying books from Midtown Comics and then having to, you know, they're not getting the discount they would if they were coming straight from an actual distributor, because it's not a distributor. It's a retail outlet taking stock and sending it to you. So, you know what I mean? It would be like if we bought something off Amazon and tried to resell it for a profit. It would be really, you know, your margin's going to be wafer thin. So that's what I'm thinking. Do you think if Marvel was to follow, would it put pressure on Midtown to branch that off into a subsidiary, manage it completely different, and reset the pricing structure?
Well, I was curious once DC made this move. Well, DC went even further. They said they weren't going to buy from or go to give to Diamond at all.
Right.
At first, they said they were going to do it with all three distributors, and now they're not going to go to Diamond at all. But what I was curious about, which ties into what you just asked, is what are the other publishers going to do? Are they going to use all three of them? Are they going to just do Diamond? And if they were to go to all three of them, I would think that would be enough to entice Midtown and DCBS to do exactly what you said, break off and make a straight distribution center that could give the same type of discounts that the comic shop owners. And I know that's kind of like there's probably like a line there that, you know, how would they just be doing that and then kind of giving their store the same type of deal? You know, all those things have to be worked out, but would that be enough? And for sure, I think if they did that, that would allay a lot of the worries that the comic shop owners, and it would be so much better, healthier for the comic book industry.
I agree. I worked at a comic store when I was a teenager in the 80s, and they came from 3 or 4 different places. They didn't come from one place back then. You know, it was the 1990s is when, you know, the comic book industry took on water the first time, that it ended up with the one distributor. You know, and most people say it's because nobody else wanted to deal with comic books anymore, and that's why the one company got the deal. Who knows what, I don't know. But, you know, this is really interesting to me, and it's going to be really crazy to watch this play out, I think, over the rest of this year. I think by the end of the year, we'll have a better picture of where the comic book industry stands, as far as who's even going to be publishing comics anymore.
Yeah. And I think this whole issue is basically, it should have come ahead long before this. This is just basically an event that happened that forced all these things coming to light. That this had been happening, the deterioration of the comic industry has been happening over the years. And it was like one of those things where it's like, yeah, we know there's a problem, but we can't deal with it now. We're going to push it ahead to the next. But because of this event, now they're forced to deal with this, which they should have done quite a while ago. They would have been the industry would have been so much better off if they.
We got back into comics around 2012, you know, reading steadily again, you and I, and you've been saying it since that time. why are they beholden to one distributor? That is insane. One catastrophe and it's over. The whole industry was propped up on toothpicks. We saw it happen.
And that's precisely what happened. How many people lost their livelihood because one person said, "You know what? I think we're done."
Right.
Whereas if they were getting from 2 or 3 different sources, okay, life would be a little bit troublesome, but your business wouldn't be underwater.
There's a contingency, right?
I mean, as for me, as you know, I worked in the delivery service, and the company I worked for came in second to Brown, the first. And it took a while for I'll say it, FedEx, to start getting up to where people trusted us, and now even more to where, FedEx is just as good, if not better, than UPS.
Right. You just can't have one solution to any problem. That's just, I almost said problematic, but yeah.
Stupid is what it is.
Yeah.
Dumb.
It's stupid. Dumb, stupid.
And I always thought that was a problem, just simply on the common sense monopoly thing. It's like, why would you want to have that? But I didn't even know about these other issues about the way they ship the comics and all the things that they tell the comic
They dictate, yeah.
They dictate how to have their business. That's crazy.
Yeah, well, they have that reseller summit every year, and I was friends with a comic shop owner years ago who used to go to that and say, "You're just basically lectured to, and promised the moon and given a slice of cheese playing the moon." So,
where else are you going to go?
Where else are you going to go?
Where are you?
I think what we should do is bring Dan from Boom Tube Comics in on this down the road and just follow up on it and see where everything ends up. But it's definitely an interesting topic.
I'd like to know, first of all, whether he agrees with all the other points that we brought up about other comic shop owners and why. Would he agree with it, or does he disagree with it?
Right. All right, we got to wrap this sucker up, put it to bed. Let's go around and do recommendations real quick. Edson, book, TV, movie, recommend something.
There was this, I think Pete might have brought up before about, in a previous podcast, about how Dynamite does a good job of taking movie and TV franchises and makes them, was it you or might have been
Unpublished scripts, that one?
Taking franchises that started off as movies and TV shows and made great comics out of it.
That would be
and
Dark
I have
Horse,
I actually brought a great example of it. Dynamite did a James Bond. It was like a 6-issue series. I'm not sure if I'm going to pronounce it. Vargr, Vargr.
Vargr, that was great.
It's written by Warren Ellis. He's a great writer. And the thing that hit me right away was the first 10 pages of the first issue. No words whatsoever, all action panels. And I wish writers of comic books would take that as an example, especially the ones that want to fill up that drives me crazy, want to fill up all the panels with words. It's a visual medium too, okay? You can just show your action without having bubbles of words all over the place describing what's happening. People can see that. The first whole 10 pages, it's all just action of James Bond chasing somebody down and fighting them, and there are no bubble words at all. And it's a great series. Shows all the typical James Bond, bantering with Moneypenny and M, with all the jokes and everything in it. It feels like it should have been a movie.
I concur. Pete?
Well, throwing back to our previous segment, I'm actually going to recommend that everyone check out Robotech.
Wow. Okay.
Because it is available, like you said, is on Netflix. It's available on Crackle. It's an interesting feat of storytelling, taking things that are not related whatsoever. Like I said, Lord of the Rings, the original Star Wars, and then The Matrix, all as one coherent story. And I think people should check it out. Just as it was ahead of its time, and it probably would be much more accepted now that serial storytelling is much more of the norm.
Very good. I concur again.
Mm-hmm.
Paul?
I would have to, this is kind of dumb, Pluto TV.
Just the service itself?
Just the service, it's free. I've been watching some, I never thought I'd be watching stuff on my phone. I said, shit, no way. Sure enough, there I am laying in bed watching documentaries and, funny shows.
I've actually heard of that, and I should give it a try.
You will giggle, my friend. And that's mine.
I'm going to recommend sitcom or comedy. It's not so much a sitcom that you recommended to me just a few days ago.
From Pluto.
Well, it's
I
produced
know.
through the IFC Independent Film Channel. It's called Brockmire, and you can get it on Hulu. I finished season 1 in one day. There's 8 episodes per season. They're only half hour, 25 minutes, and it's really funny. He's a broken down, alcoholic, drug-addled Major League Baseball play-by-play guy who loses his schniz on the air, gets fired, and ends up in a small mill town in Pennsylvania calling minor league baseball. And yeah, it's a little bit Slapshot, it's a little bit Major League, and a whole lot dysfunction. So, and if you're looking for a politically correct comedy, keep flipping. Because what I like about it is it takes shots at everybody and everything. So, so that's mine. So,
is there anything today that's politically correct?
Oh, I don't know if you look hard enough. So, with that, for Edson, Paul, Pete, and George, and myself, Shitty Chicken,
At Eastside Pizza.
at the empty room next to Eastside Pizza, we bid you adieu until next time.
They killed the giggler, man. They killed the giggler! They had no business doing that. None.